So we are in the lesson 9, my dear Lovisians, entitled Thomas Aquinas, and the topic is about natural law. So this is one of the images of Saint Thomas Aquinas. So he was born on the year 1225 and he died on the year 1274. Saint Thomas Aquinas became the Catholic Church's top theologian. Noong Middle Ages ay maraming mga na-translate na works of Aristotle. So si Aquinas merged Aristotle with Christianity. Okay, after the recovery of the philosophy of Aristotle via Muslim scholars in the 12th and 13th century, the purposiveness or indirectedness of nature in Aristotle is identified by Aquinas with God's purposes. You still remember our last topic na ang development is teleological development. So merong end, no? So merong purpose ang nature. So si Aquinas, he got that idea of Aristotle, he Christianized it, and he made it as God's purposes. So in this YouTube video, I'm just facilitating you in the understanding of the module. So in your module, marami mga theories sa natural law, but what we will be using is the natural law according to Saint Thomas Aquinas. For Aquinas, there are two key features of the natural law. The first is that when we focus on God's role as the giver of the natural law is just one aspect of divine providence. And so the theory of natural law is from the perspective just one part among others of the theory of divine providence. The second is that when we focus on the human's role as recipient of the natural law. So yung una is God, ngayon sa man. The natural law constitutes the principles of practical rationality. Yan ang napag-aralan natin nung last module, na ang virtues is something practical, not so much theoretical. Those principles by which human action is to be judged as reasonable or unreasonable. And so the theory of natural law is from the perspective, the preeminent part of the theory of practical rationality. So ang natural law ay part siya ng practical rationality. Of course, while our main focus will be on the status of the natural law as constituting the principles of practical rationality, huwag natin kalimutan na tignan din yung view ni Saint Thomas Aquinas ng natural law is an aspect of the divine providence. Para kay Saint Thomas Aquinas, ang natural law is a participation in the eternal law. So please take note of that the natural law, according to Saint Thomas Aquinas, is a participation in the eternal law. The eternal law for Aquinas is the rational plan by which all creation is ordered. The natural law is the way that the human being participates in the eternal law. While non-rational beings, like plants and animals, have a share in the eternal law only by being determined by it, their action non-freely results from their determinate natures, the existence of which result from God's will in accordance with God's eternal plan. Rational beings, tayo mga human beings, are able to grasp our share in the eternal law and freely act on it. It is, according to Saint Thomas Aquinas, it is this feature of the natural law that justifies our calling the natural law. Because for Saint Thomas Aquinas, law is a rule of action put into place by one who has care of the community And as God has care of the entire universe, God's choosing to bring into existence beings who can act freely and in accordance with principles of reason is enough to justify our thinking of those principles of reason as law. So yung law, yan ang definition. Don't forget about that. It's a rule of action put into place by one who has care of the community. At ang Diyos, dahil rational beings tayo, ay nakikipag-participate tayo sa definition ng law na yan. For Thomas Aquinas, the natural law constitutes the basic principles of practical rationality for human beings and has this status by nature. So ang ibig sabihin nito, the precepts of the natural law are universally binding by nature. So universally siya. And that the precepts of the natural law are universally knowable by nature. So lahat ng tao, Kristiyano man o hindi, ay malalaman nila ang natural law kasi knowable, universally knowable, and universally binding by nature. The precepts of the natural law are binding by nature. No beings could share our human nature yet fail to be bound by the precepts of the natural law. The precepts of the natural law are also knowable by nature. All human beings possess a basic knowledge of the principles of the natural law. Aquinas takes it that there is a core of practical knowledge that all human beings have, even if the implications of that knowledge can be hard to work out, or the efficacy of that knowledge can be thwarted by strong emotion or evil dispositions. So may dalawang thesis si St. Thomas Aquinas. First, from the God's eye point of view, natural law is a law through its place in the scheme of divine providence. At pangalawa, from human's eye point of view, it constitutes a set of naturally binding and knowable precepts of practical reason. According to St. Thomas Aquinas, the fundamental principle of the natural law is that good is to be done and evil avoided. No? To do good and to avoid evil. Yan ang fundamental principle ng natural law. At sabi ni St. Thomas Aquinas, no one can in acting simply pursue good. Hindi ka pwedeng maghanap ng good lang na in generic. One has to pursue some particular good. And Aquinas hold that we know immediately by inclination, by our tendencies, that there are a variety of things that count as good and thus be pursued. For example, life, procreation, knowledge, society, and reasonable conduct. 5 po ang pinopursue ng human being na something that is good. And this is our human tendency or inclined towards this good. Na good ng life, goodness ng procreation, goodness ng knowledge, goodness ng society, and goodness ng reasonable conduct. So on Aquinas' view, it is the good that is fundamental, whether an action or type of an action is right, is logically posterior to whether that action brings about or realize or is some good. The good is, on Aquinas' view, prior to the right. Sabi pa ni St. Thomas Aquinas, there are certain ways of acting in response to the basic human goods that are intrinsically flawed. And second, for an act to be right or reasonable is for it to be an act that is in no way intrinsically flawed. So ang isang action na by nature ay masama na ay hindi pwedeng maging tama. The important task then is to identify the ways in which an act can be intrinsically flawed. Alam na natin ito, pinag-aralan natin sa mga previous modules, yung kailangan para malaman natin na ang isang act is intrinsically flawed through the acts, through the individual acts such as their objects, their ends, and their circumstances. So yung tatlong sources of morality. An act might be flawed through a mismatch of object and end. An act might be flawed through the circumstances. And an act might be flawed merely through its intention. And remember, our last lesson about virtues, so kineri rin ni St. Thomas Aquinas ang Aristotelian view that we always need the moral and intellectual virtues in order to act well. So, an Aquinas view, meron talaga mga action na kahit anumang intention o circumstance na mabuti ay intrinsically evil or intrinsically flawed. For example, killing of the innocent is always wrong, like abortion, no? Always wrong ang abortion, as is lying, adultery, sodomy, and blasphemy. And they are always wrong is a matter of the natural law. Para kay St. Thomas Aquinas, yung kanyang concept or ideas ng natural law, his natural law view understands principles of right to be grounded in the principles of good. But take note that Aquinas will deny that the principles of the right enjoy us to maximize the good, while he allows that consideration of the greater good have a role in practical reasoning. Action can be irremediably flawed merely through badness of intention, flawed such that no good consequences that flow from the action will be sufficient to justify it. And while Aquinas is in some way Aristotelian and recognizes that the virtue will always be required in order to hit the mark in a situation of choice, he rejects the view commonly ascribed to Aristotle that there are no universally true general principles of right. To summarize, the paradigmatic natural law view holds that first, the natural law is given by God. Second, it is naturally authoritative over all human beings. Third, it is naturally knowable by human beings. Okay. Further, it holds that, number 4, the good is prior to the right. Okay. So, mas nauna ang mabuti kaysa sa tama. Number 5, right action is action that responds non-defectively to the good. And number 6, there are a variety of ways in which action can be defective with respect to the good. And number 7, some of these ways can be captured and formulated as general rules. So, si Aquinas rin ay yung kanyang view ng natural law is also shared by Thomas Hobbes. Okay? For Thomas Hobbes held that the laws of nature are divine law, no, very similar with St. Thomas Aquinas, that all humans are bound by them, and that it's easy to know at least the basics of the natural law. And Hobbes held that the fundamental good is self-preservation, and that the laws of nature direct the way to this good. The first principle of the natural law is good is to be done and pursued, and evil avoided. Yan ang tinatawag na lang synderesis, no? Ibig sabihin, yan yung unang principle na knowable and ang lahat ng mga tao and universally binded lahat ang mga tao. Itong first principle nito ay alam na natin that good is to be done and pursued and evil avoided. All other precepts of natural law rest upon this. Good, no? To do good and to avoid evil. So what then are the basic principles of the natural law? No? Based yan sa first principle na yan, na to do good and to avoid evil, which everyone should know. Consider the following. Okay? First, natural law is an eternal moral law. So moral law siya. Eternal means it's given by God, revealed to all people through human nature. Second, natural law influences but cannot save even fallen and sinful humanity. Kahit makasalanan ka ay andyan pa rin yung natural law. Third, natural law is the proper basis of political authority. Fourth, natural law authorizes society to establish a government. Number 5, governments are themselves subject to the natural law. And number 6, each society's law should apply the natural law to the society's particular circumstances. May dalawang interpretation ng natural law, yung ordo naturae and ordo rationis, yung order of nature and order of reason. Doon sa order of nature, as nakikita nyo dyan sa screen, ang source of moral norms is written in nature. Doon sa order of reason, source ay ng natural law is human experience taken in all its complexity and relationships. Ang knowledge, paano malalaman ng natural law? Observe the way nature works. Presumes only one reading of natural law. While sa order of reason, yung knowledge ay through reason whatever will promote well-being of humans. Okay, so sa mga Stoics ang nagpropromote ng order of nature, 3rd century BC, they are the earliest to develop notion of natural law. The emphasis is to conform to what is given in nature. Okay, because the world is interconnected. Don't fool with Mother Nature. Si Ulpian sa Jus Naturale, rule of action common to humans and to animals, natural law became identified with animal instincts, separated natural law from law proper to humans. No? Personally, ang interpretation ko sa natural law is not order of nature. Kasi sa mga na tumitingin sa natural law sa order of nature, kung yung nature ng buhok ay humapahaba na pahaba, sabig sabihin na hindi pwedeng magpagupit ng buhok, no? Kasi yan ang something natural. Okay? Baka pati mga damit hindi natural ito. Okay? Okay, so sa order of reason, for me, in my opinion, natural law is ordo rationis. Okay? Order of reason. Aristotle did not develop a natural law theory. Nature is cause or source of activity in a being. The specific nature of humans is rationality. Morally good actions are those rationally directed toward the full actualization of human potential. Remember our last lesson on the virtues, virtue ethics, diba? Yung rationality is what is what is proper, no? Proper in human person. Kaya ang interpretation ko sa natural law ay hindi order of nature, kundi order of reason. No? So the Romans, they stress law of natural order because they are interested in establishing political order throughout the Roman Empire. Si Cicero, noong 43 BC, natural law is the innate power of reason to direct action. To live according to law given in nature is to live according to what reason commands. Si Gaius, noong 180 Anno Domini, natural law refers to international law, regulates relationships between legally autonomous territories. So, yan po, no? Nagsisiso ang order of nature and order of reason. So, for Aquinas, God is the author of nature. Reason comes from humanity. Okay? Therefore, natural law should take priority. By the time of St. Thomas Aquinas, two strains of interpretation were already firmly established, the order of reason and the order of nature. Kung ako tatanungin ninyo sa pag-aaral ko sa Spain sa moral theology, ang mas magandang interpretation sa natural law is yung order of reason. Today, in the official teachings of the Church, the order of nature and the order of reason are still subject to some debatable issues. Kaya sa body and official church teachings ng natural law today, sa order of nature, pinibigyan ng halaga yung order of nature, casti connubii. Okay? So, a chaste love, yan, no? Humani vitae, human life, teachings against artificial contraception. Kasi hindi naman yan natural, no? Letter on the pastoral care of homosexual persons, no? Teaching against same-sex relations, violations of natural law, artificial contraception, homosexuality, sex change, no? Kasi hindi naman natural. Sa order of reason naman, yung mga official church teachings sa Gaudium et Spes noong 1965, the See Judge Act method, Okay, the Catholic social teaching after Vatican II, Declaration on Euthanasia allows for cessation of disproportionate means of prolonging life, no? So para bang ginagamit yung reason, okay? Not a violation of natural law, cessation of disproportionate means of prolonging life. Thomas Aquinas is obviously coming from an essentialist foundation. Ito yung opposite ng existentialism. Kasi sa existentialism, existence precedes essence. While kay St. Thomas Aquinas, essentialist siya, essence precedes existence. Ibig sabihin niyan, the human person being an image of God, imago Dei, exists within the divine mind even before creation. Thus, natural law is objective, foundational, and absolute. It is good when it fulfills one's essence. So yan, it becomes evil with the privation of goodness. Christians believe that before the world and human beings were created from nothing ex nihilo by God, there existed within the divine mind an idea or essence of what is to be fully human. Humans realize the image and likeness of God when they fulfill this essence by living a life according to God's plan, which may be understood by reason reflecting on nature and being guided by the Bible, revered Word of God. Sin is understood as a falling short of this idea or essence through the misuse of free will. So take note of this, yung 5 primary principles of Thomas Aquinas are to live, to learn, to reproduce, to live in an ordered society, and to worship God. Aquinas believed that for human beings, life is the supreme good, as it is the basis for all other goods. Siya ang number 1 na good, ang life. Okay? Pangalawa, education makes it possible for people to become independent and fully adult. Third, reproduction. Yan yung goodness of sexuality would ensure the continuation of the human race. Law and order would ensure that justice is upheld and that individuals are able to interact without fear of oppression. And number 5, worshiping God, the creator and sustainer of the world and humanity, offers fulfillment and love. The Italian philosopher and Christian monk of the 13th century, Thomas Aquinas, thought morality was important for everyone, in that being a good person was a vital part of God's plan for each of us. But he knew that not everyone has been exposed to the Bible or had even heard of God. So what bothered him was, how could people follow God's moral rules, also known as the divine commands, if they didn't even know about the guy who made the commandments? Aquinas just couldn't believe that God would have expectations for us if he didn't also give us, all of us, a way to meet them. So Aquinas theorized that God made us preloaded with the tools we need to know. That's good. This idea became known as the natural law theory. In fact, the theory of the natural law is based on the idea that God wants us to want things, specifically good things. We have the tendency towards goodness, no? So yun ang ibig sabihin nun. As part of this natural order, God made certain things that were good for His various creatures. Sunlight and water are good for plants. Meat is good for cats, and plants are good for bunnies. And because God is awesome, He instilled all of His creatures with an intuitive desire for the things that He designed to be best for them. The things that we're designed to seek are known as the basic goods, and there are 7 of them. The first thing that all living things just naturally want, Aquinas said, is self-preservation. Okay? The drive to sustain life. Aquinas thought God built all creatures with a survival instinct. After preserving our own lives, our next most pressing basic good, pangalawa, is to make more life. In other words, to reproduce. Some beings are able to do this on their own, but since we need to coordinate matters with a partner, God kindly instilled us with a sex drive and made the process feel good to make sure that we do it. But once we manage to achieve our second basic good, which is reproduction, we need to educate those kids we just made. For humans, that's going to mean stuff like school and lessons in morality. Meron ring mga good na para lang sa tao. Okay, for example, for instance, Aquinas thought we are built with an instinctual desire to know God. Aquinas believed we seek God in our lives whether we've been exposed to the idea of God or not. Next, taking a page out of Aristotle's book, Aquinas also said that humans are naturally social animals, so it's part of our basic good to live in community with others. While short periods of solitude can be good, he believed that we are basically pack animals, and our desire for love and acceptance and our susceptibility to peer pressure all are evidence of this. And finally, Aquinas said we are built to shun ignorance. We're natural knowers, we're inquisitive, and we want to be right. This is another trait we share with non-human animals because knowledge promotes survival and ignorance can mean starving to death or ending up as someone else's dinner. So these are the basic goods, and from them we can derive the natural laws. We don't need the Bible or religion class or church in order to understand the natural law, Aquinas said. Instead, our instinct shows us the basic goods, and reason allows us to derive the natural law from them. Right acts, therefore, are simply those that are in accordance with the natural law. Another point also, for its negative law or prohibition, there's usually a corresponding positive one, a positive injunction. For example, do not kill is a prohibition, but there's also a positive injunction that encourages us to promote life. And I can take that positive injunction of promoting life to mean anything from feeding the hungry to caring for the sick to making healthy choices for myself. And we could do the same thing with each of the basic goods. So ang question ngayon, kung meron tayong tendency towards goodness, bakit marami pa ring mga tao na gumagawa ng masama o they do not follow the natural law? Okay? Aquinas, again, following Aristotle here, said that even though we're rational, we're also emotional creatures. So we have feelings. And sometimes we see that we should do, but emotion overpowers our reason, and we fail to do the things we know we should. May mga issues ngayon na ito ba ay against natural law or this is in accordance with natural law? Issues such as being a transgender, same-sex marriage, artificial contraception, in vitro fertilization, and like are debatable to many people. For example, according to Pope Pius XII, masturbation is unnatural, self-abuse, and is sinful as every sperm is sacred. On the contrary, Sigmund Freud would say that masturbation is normal for healthy adolescent sexual development. Pope Paul VI said that in vitro fertilization is interfering with God-given nature. However, Lord Winston also said that using reason to meet infertile couples' natural desire to become parents is not a sinful act. So, dear students, dear Louisians, given some of these pressing issues in our society today, from which sides of the coin are you, based on your personal decision? Look at the following pictures and take some moments of reflection and be ready to defend your argument according to what your conscience tells you. So yan yung same-sex marriage ni Aiza Segura. Sabi niya, we are just asking for equality here, hindi sa church, kung hindi sa Pilipinas. Sa bansa, we're talking about laws na sana matignan kaming mga LGBT as equals. So based on our study on the natural law, Ito ba ay itong same-sex marriage ay something immoral or unethical? Yung transgender in the Philippines, no, from lalaki maging babae o babae maging lalaki. Ano masasabi ninyo? Yung in vitro fertilization and also human cloning. So learning task ninyo sa module na ito, select one from any of the following issues: same-sex marriage, euthanasia, or mercy killing, in vitro fertilization, sex change or sex transplant, human cloning or use of human sex dolls. Explain in 3 to 5 sentences why you agree or disagree. Post your answer in LMS, and this worth 10 points. So 3 to 5 sentences. Napansin ko nung last na module ninyo ay naging more than 5 sentences yung pag-answer ninyo. So please 3 to 5 sentences only.